It's a pleasure to be joined today by Ken Moelis, founder and executive chairman of Moelis Company. Ken, it's a genuine privilege to be speaking with you today. Thank you so much for making the time. Let's get straight into it. I'd love to
Thank you.
start a little earlier in your career. So you've described Drexel as a rocket ship up and a rocket ship down, with its eventual collapse in the 80s. As a young banker living through that rise and fall, what did it change in you?
Well, I think for those who don't know, Drexel was, when I joined it in 1981, it was a job I got because nobody took it. And so I got the job and I decided I was going to prove I could do it. So I ended up staying there. But Drexel then rocketed from being basically an unprofitable firm, being the most profitable firm maybe in the history of Wall Street and a margin basis. I mean, went from zero to 2.5 billion of profits or something. Doesn't sound like much today in 5 years, but that was a lot. And right after that, they ran into troubles, regulatory troubles. And by 5 years after that, they were bankrupt. Valentine's Day, 1990, I believe. So, look, I think it, when I started, I was very young. I was 21, and I think it just showed me that hard work matters. I mean, these were Mike Milken, was dominating Wall Street at the time and would get in at 3, 4 in the morning. And, coming out of college where I missed my accounting final because the accounting final was at 1 p.m. And I didn't get up in time. uh, changing to start your day at 4 in the morning and work. And that just changed my outlook on what hard work meant. I mean, it just didn't think of it before. And then I think very formative, and I hope nobody else has to go through this. This is why you can read books and do things without having it happen to you. The decline of Drexel Burnham from the very top, from the place that was on the front page of every magazine and making America go in 1985 to bankrupt by 1990, through a series of mishaps and run-ins with the government, was, I think, almost a bigger lesson. Um, and it really made an impact on me that, look, if there's a line in the sand on regulatory or things that are right or wrong, you stay 2 feet away from that line. And it's served me well for the next 30 years of my career, 35 years of my career.
And obviously, at that time, you were working with Michael Milken, the bond king. And even, I guess, years after that or during that period, you're working with people like Steve Wynn, right? People who were extremely experienced. And as a 21-year-old or someone in your 20s in that environment, how did you prove yourself without losing your ability to learn and absorb all the knowledge and experience they have?
Well, it's interesting you say that. You go like people with a lot of experience. And I go back, it's 40 years ago. Mike Milken, I think, was in his mid 30s when I was 21. By the time I was really doing things 25, he might have been 40. And I think Steve Wynn was not much older. So again, I thought of them as old men because I was 22 or 23, but they were young too. And I think the way you proved yourself, and I wasn't trying to prove anything at the time. It actually was almost the freest time of my life, I think, because I wasn't sure I'd stay in the job. You didn't have anything to protect. There's something very freeing about not having a legacy to protect. You're just starting out. But hard work, try to anticipate what people are going to want, and very few people will do that. So if you can become a trusted advisor, if Mike Milken could say 2 or 3 sentences to me and then get to this feeling that it's gonna happen, whatever he told me to do, I'm not gonna forget about it. I'm not gonna um, I'm not gonna come up with an excuse to why it couldn't happen. I'm gonna figure it out. Boy, when people are busy and they're trying to accomplish something, same with Steve Wynn. He had a lot of things to do. He was building out Las Vegas, and so people want to be able to rely on you. And I would say, people ask me, you sure you'll ask me about success, but being reliable, and getting things done is paramount.
Mhm. No, that makes complete sense. And I think you touched on a very important point there that you were not trying to prove yourself, right? And I think in an environment like that, albeit perhaps not as older as I would have experienced or as older as I would have assumed, you can learn so much, right? And you have nothing to lose at that point because you don't have the legacy, you don't have the reputation. So it's a great environment to be in.
It's very freeing. Everybody you're talking to doesn't see you change. I see a lot of people who literally change. I know you're nervous doing this interview. And I would say to you, don't change. Just be you. And, you're worried about, are you going to be able to perform something that an interviewer would do? Well, I don't give a damn about that. And neither should you. You should just be and then it takes it all away because you're not pretending anymore. You're going to succeed by exactly who you are, not by being a pretend person. And I will tell you, you can't pretend your whole life. So you better succeed being yourself. And by the way, when I say that, I always say to people, the best uh, image of yourself. You can be yourself, but you can be the best part of yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you say that. I think being authentic and not putting people on a pedestal and realizing that at the end of the day, everyone's just human. It's a very
Yep.
basic thing, but doing it in practice can be quite difficult.
Yep.
If we jump a couple decades, so we leave the 80s and we go to the 2000s, you were navigating the Quest and Verizon situation at UBS with a lot of bureaucracy, I'm sure people have heard. And you were rereading Atlas Shrugged. I believe that was your third or fourth
I think
reread?
third. I
Third.
think third because I've read it again since then. So I think I've done
Okay.
it 4 times without my third.
And the idea of leaving the firm at that point in time was taking a lot of traction. It was something you were considering. You've also spoken about how when Dagny decides to build her own railroad is when you closed the book and you were like, I'm leaving UBS. Um, so when you made that decision to walk away, how did you sort of carry the possibility of being wrong? Because we've spoken, we touched on the idea of being right at that point in time, or early in your career, but the possibility of being wrong with the reputation and the professional consequences that you might have faced ultimately.
It's a very good question. And I think that I was more worried about being wrong by staying put. There's 100% I knew that staying put was wrong. So I didn't have to worry about whether action was wrong. And by the way, I hate to say it, reading Atlas Shrugged for the third time helped me. It's a book of very, people call them very two-dimensional, characters who are either very heroic or not heroic. But I was in the middle of a heroic part of it, and I realized that I'm not doing what I want to do. So I think your question is, I knew if I stayed, it was wrong,
Mhm.
and that my reputation would decline and my relationship with my clients would decline because I was not living to myself. So it wasn't, hey, if I do this, will I fail? It was, if I stay put, I will fail. I will fail in the definition that I set forward, not financially, but um, morally and reputationally in my relationships, really, with my clients.
And then obviously starting your own thing. When you started Moelis Company in 2007, you were competing with giants who had brand power strength from centuries and even balance sheet strength. So with even despite your relationships, which I know you've spoken a lot about building the right relationships and sort of maintaining them and being authentic with them. Now we've just seen. Um, how did you convince a CEO to get a mandate despite them seeing ease in picking perhaps a Goldman Sachs, a Morgan Stanley, a JP Morgan?
Well, two things happened. One, when I started it, right after I started it, by the way, the crisis hit, the global financial crisis. So some of the giants you were talking about were pretty wounded. So I'm not sure I ever really did have to go up against the full giant. I mean, you had Lehman Brothers go out of business. Um, you know, you had half the industry just get chopped at the knees. But it actually, look, first of all, the idea to start it was my relationships with bankers themselves, by the way. So I didn't think I'd go and start Moelis and Company because I'd be able to do one big deal. There's a lot of bankers who do that. They go, hey, I got two big deals. Let me go do them on my own. I decided that I might be a good deal doer, but I think what's unique about my career has been how many quality people have chosen to work with me and stayed with me and were loyal to me. And I saw that as the asset, the ability to attract great people. Now, this idea of battling big firms, remember, in the world of corporate M&A and decision making, it's judgment that counts. The difference between, and I'm just going to pick, Bank of America's loan and Citibank's loan and JP Morgan's loan, if you're really good, might be an eighth of a point. That's not going to make or break your life. By the way, everybody wants to save the eighth, but It's not going to make or break your career. Doing a bad M&A deal, that is devastating. That you can lose your company, you can lose your job, you can lose your fortune if you're an entrepreneur. So judgment counts and you can't replace it. And that's how you win. That's how you won these transactions is CEOs are going into a battle and the future of their career and their business is on the line. And it'd be like if you walked in a hospital, and you're having a heart attack, you don't ask who's the cheapest doctor, you don't ask who's the biggest hospital. You go, who can save my life? Who can fix my heart now? Now, I'm just saying those are the questions you ask, and I'm not comparing the two careers, but I will say that decision at that point in time is not who's the biggest.
It's very fascinating you said that. And sort of staying on the same line of doctors, you said that you wouldn't want to go to a doctor that's competing. I don't think I would either.
Okay.
Um, so for clients, advisory is not a competition. Ultimately, it's about their trust and continuity, and also, as you mentioned, it's about getting the right judgment. So, do you think is a competitive market for mandates, or in a competitive market for mandates, where do you sort of draw the line between winning business and winning clients, and also giving the right judgment consistently over time?
The real question is, what's your time frame for success in a business? So I've always had kind of an infinite time frame. As I've gotten older, I realize that I'm not actually going to live to infinity. I used to not just assume that, but now I guess it's becoming clear that might not happen. But I always had an infinite time frame, and the most important asset in that time frame, and it will be for all of you, is your reputation. It's really your reputation because when I say relationships. Look, you don't have a relationship without a reputation. I mean, you don't have a quality relationship, let's put it that way. And so one leads to the other. Relationships are the most important thing in the business world, in any business, by the way. I would guess almost in any business. But that also comes from your reputation, your dependability, your reliability. And so therefore, this idea that you can accelerate your career by telling somebody to do a deal that doesn't work. No, you can make an extra fee. By the way, there are a lot of bankers, and I'll say this, who, you're given a lot of information when you're in the deal world. And so the first thing they do is go to the next client and they start talking about things they just talked about with their old client. Now that's very interesting to this person. And they will act very friendly to you because you're telling them gossip about, but they will never tell you anything else and you will destroy your reputation. I've seen it over and over with young bankers think that's really good. This person wants to see me because I have that kind of info. Well, that's the quickest way to destroy your career. You get a meeting and you will destroy your career. Same with your best judgment. And so you never try to, you just do the best you can. You're not always right. And then the last thing you have to remember, it's not your company. Look, I am an advisor. And there have been transactions where at the end I would have said, don't do that or do that. But it really, I'm the advisor, not the principal. I get to do that with my own company. That's been fun. But all I can do is give them my best advice. And then you got to support. And then you got to turn around and support your client.
It's very fascinating you say that because I think when you decided to price the Moelis IPO, you guys were targeting $26, I believe, and you decided to go $25. I think you said it was something about not going for the last nickel. And you just mentioned how you're not the principal for someone else's company, you're just the advisor. So how do you make sure, or how do you sort of deliver that judgment to someone when you know it's right to perhaps not fight for the last nickel, but again, it's someone's company, it's their baby, right? It's their brand. How do you sort of deliver that judgment and that advice?
Well, it's judgment. I'll tell you a story because the IPO did, it happened the week that Russia invaded Crimea, I think 2014. So we went into the week with a very hot, full book, high end of the range. I think the range was 24 to 26. And in the middle of the week, it got a little less, it was not as good a market. And on the final, the underwriter was telling me, I think we're going to have to do this at 25. We're still trying to get 26, but we don't have it. And I land at 4 o'clock, and they say, a good friend of mine, he's always been a very long holder and a relationship investor. He said he'd prefer the deal at 25, but he's not going to miss Ken Moelis's IPO for a dollar. I said, I'll call you right back. And I called and I said, I'm so happy you're in the deal. And I just want you to know you're making me price this deal at 25. At $25, it's going to come. So he goes, "Oh, I didn't say that. I said I would do it at 26." I said, "I know you did. And that's why I'm not going to stick you with a bad deal because you were willing to come at 26 because I'm a friend and you really didn't want to do it. So I'm not going to do it." Um, and he just hung up the phone. He said, "That's why I invested in you, Ken." That was his only comment. He goes, "That's why we're in." So again, it's just like a judgment. What do you want to accomplish? What's your long-term goal? So I thought it was the beginning of Moelis and Company. And what do you do at the beginning? I think you gather your friends, you gather forces because you're going into a hell of a fight and a hell of a competition. And I think that was my thought process is gather your forces. And your shareholders are a major force in that battle.
Yeah, it seems like all around it's just people, right? You're investing in people. You're ultimately trying to see how you can give back to the people that have supported you, whether that's uh, financially or given you business or also emotionally and just been a friend at times. So I think that's a
Yeah.
very nice story of how you've given back to people.
And the quality of the stock and how it traded and how, we've always had over 50% of our stocks been held by 10 large institutions. They feel like they're partners in the business. They feel like they can call me up. And they don't even do it. They say, Ken's told us what the game plan is. He's executing on it. So there's a lot of trust in that. And to get where we are today, maybe that one decision was key. I don't know. I can't tell you, but at the time it felt like the right thing to do.
Do you think you sort of have hyperfixated, not hyperfixated, or had a tendency to really focus on the aspect of culture where it's not bureaucratic? Because obviously UBS was a lot more bureaucratic. And has that been something you've actively taken time to implement and think about?
Yeah, I try very hard to keep it, is clients, 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 external, external, focus on what we're doing to improve our clients' lives and the internal stuff, try to make it as minimalist as possible. And that's why, if you look at our financials, we have no debt. We've tried to make the action of being at Moelis and Company very conducive to being confident that you can leave the office and go visit your client and think solely of your client for 2, 3, 4 hours, however you're along with them. You don't have to worry, like, are we going to fat finger? I don't know if you remember, but then, there's fat finger trades where you lose $1 billion because somebody hit the button with the wrong finger or, we don't have any of that. And
Yeah.
it's fantastic. Yeah, so I'm not saying I don't have this culture like that I could give you 10 slides on.
Mm.
But I know what it is. I want people to 100% feel like the firm has their back. We're taking care of their family and their career and and don't worry about us. Worry about the person on the other side of the phone. And because if you do that, everything else works.
100% Ken. And you've also described the culture you've sort of, I think before you described the culture you've sort of tried to establish as a family restaurant, because you trust the food a lot more when you see that a family's running the place. And it's like a whole ecosystem. And I
Well,
like
I
that.
have said that. We used to go to a place here and I could tell I could tell when the owner wasn't there. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't tell you exactly what I noticed.
Mhm.
But if the owner wasn't there, it was different.
Mhm.
And if you think about all the great restaurants in the world, the it's the owner is there, the owner's the chef or the owner's there, and it's just different. Owners, and that's why we pay a lot of our employees. We try to get the stock in their hands. They've made a lot of money by being in the stock. We want them to think like owners, be owners. It's I forgot about the restaurant analogy, but you're right. I notice it right away. You could tell if the owner's in the house.
Yeah, and obviously, realistically, as an owner of a company, you can't be in 1,000 places at one given time. So you have senior leaders, right? And we've spoken to Mark Adey, we've spoken to Manisha Girotra, Steve Trauber recently. I remember that conversation with them, and I just wanted to ask how you test for whether someone at that level is, I guess worthy is the wrong word, but is someone you want to give that power to in terms of carrying the firm's name, the firm's brand, the firm's culture forward with clients, right?
Yeah. Well, when we were starting, actually, it was a big deal because I had to hire from scratch almost, everybody. Now, I did have 50 or 60 people come over from that I knew. And by the way, anybody who's starting anything, I would tell you, it's very hard, especially if you go into maybe a tech thing, which is more getting the code right or something. But we were in a business where I had to have, as I said, if we were moving forward, I had to have just, you need people around you. It was very important that we had 10 or 20 people that were bound to each other. Now, then we had to go higher. In the beginning, because I started it, I was 48, I was very much in the deal flow. I would hire either people that I knew from being on my side of the table, but the other way was to hire people who you met on the who are on the other side. And you go, so every once in a while you go, oh, that person really did a great job. They out negotiated me. They stole my client. I've seen how they've acted. And so I would say it was a perfect time to start the business because at 48, I was right in the mix of, right now I'm 20 years older and I don't interact with everybody on the deal flow. So I have to rely now on those people to hire their peers, which we do. But at the time, I sort of felt like I knew who I wanted to hire either on my side, who I had been on the side of the table, or I knew was worthy from being on the other side. And their character a little bit too.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I want to move a little bit into the philosophical side of our conversation. You said that the optimists make the money while the cynics get the headlines. And you've also described Wharton as the Red Bull from The Matrix, as a place that sort of grounded you in discipline learning about incentives and where one plus one really equals two. And you've also sort of referenced Rand's idea that when conclusions do not add up, it's not that the conclusions are wrong, it's the premises or the inputs that sort of feed them that are contradictory or wrong. Over a long career in which the world has often presented difficulties or had destabilizing premises, so destabilizing inputs, how have you sort of sustained that optimism while continually re-examining your career?
Well, I'm not, I don't, people around me say I'm an optimist. I don't feel like an optimist. I want to tell the group here one thing I learned that you were asking me if being executive chairman has taken that away. I just want to give you, because I wish somebody would have told me this a long time ago. But look, I think it was Ayn Rand who said, check your premises. If something is contradictory, check your premises. One of them is wrong, meaning you've have premises in life about what's about to happen, and if it doesn't work that way, then check why you thought it, which has been great. And you asked me like what premise I've struggled with. I think I felt, and Wharton was part of this. I've always been very rational. One plus one does equal two. I know there's been a lot of stuff on the internet whether one plus one actually equals two, and there are facts in life right now that I think are facts, and people are debating whether they're facts. I'm going to stay away from the getting into a political social commentary, but I'm very much so. I think the premise that I've learned, which is very disappointing, but I've learned to live with it, is that, and by the way, I think it's if you can avoid it, it's a good thing to avoid, is that most people want to belong and get along than more than they want to be correct about something. What's the new thing? You just move along to fit in with a crowd, and most people will give up a rational conclusion and rational thinking, will forego that to get along with a crowd. And it's a great opportunity for everybody, by the way, because 90% of the people you meet will be much more interested in being accepted than being right. And and it's tough to be right when everybody else disagrees with you, and you still might be right, but you'll be treated like you are wrong. Um, it's funny when I started Moelis Company about 10 years ago. I started Moelis Company 20 years ago, but about 10 years ago, I went to Blackstone to meet with Steve Schwartzman and the executive committee. And Steve opens up by introducing me to the executive committee. And he goes, "Oh, this is Ken Moelis, who's built a fabulous business." And he said, even though everybody in New York thought he was going bankrupt. I'm about to speak, and I look at him, I go, "Steve, everybody thought I was going to go bankrupt?" He goes, "Oh, yeah. Everybody would tell me Ken Moelis is bandy two click, and he's going to go bust, and it'll never work." And I said, "Really? I never heard that." He goes, "Well, that's why you're a good entrepreneur. You never even heard it." And again, this idea of just being able to stand, get out. I didn't actually hear it, and I don't know if that's I'm deaf or whatever, but uh, this idea of being able to withstand not being in a herd, and it's difficult. I know everybody there is going, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, let's see. It's very hard. Ayn Rand called it a first hand. If you've never read The Fountainhead, it's a great book, and she comes up with this term called a second-hander. And a second-hander is somebody who gets all their ideas secondhand,
Hmm.
derivatives. Like, I have a feeling. Why do you feel that way? Well, the New York Times told me to.
Hmm.
Why do you feel that way? Because my professor told me to. Why do you believe that? And the main character of that book is a first-hand, is a primary, somebody who actually fundamentally comes to conclusions and makes the world tick. I don't know if that's compliment, but if you can do that, and I think it's very difficult, and there'll be times when you're very lonely, but it'll work well over a long period of time.
Sort of going back to what you said to our first question about Drexel, do you think people should sort of seek to put themselves in uncomfortable situations? Because you look, as you mentioned, you could live vicariously and make your opinions or create your own opinions from others, or you could make your own experiences based on others. But do you think there's merit in sort of struggling and going through that process yourself? And
Oh
as you
yeah,
mentioned, being in a difficult position.
yeah. Well, look, everything's a difficult position. Look, nobody. It's funny. I came to that conclusion 30, 40 years ago. I thought everybody looking at this said, "Oh, Ken Moelis, everything worked well for him. It all was easy." I can't tell you how many times I had complete catastrophe, disaster, and feeling that the world, that it was not. And most of the time, and you could even read. I was talking about Steve Schwarzman. Read his book. He had cataclysmic opportunities for Blackstone to not work in the early days, and it'll happen. So you'll be in difficult positions. So I will say, yes, if I were one of the reasons I would encourage everybody, even early in their career, I think going to an investment bank and doing the internship type program. Look, whenever a doctor comes out of medical school, they put them in a hospital because it's triage. That you see, the flu victim, the bullet, the this, the that. You get to see everything, and you get a real overview of the world. I feel like banking, is a wonderful place like that where you get restructurings and financings and M&A, and you get to see how smart people look at different things. I'm a big fan of it. I think it does a lot. And the other thing I would tell everybody is read a lot. It will look, having to do difficult things. Yes, you have to do them, but sometimes you can read about difficult things and you can avoid them and still have the experience and knowledge of what happens during difficult times. So I spent a lot of my life reading. I read, the best fiction in the world is valuable because the Tolstoys and the Victor Hugos of the world will tell you about human nature in a way that even a biography can't, or an Ayn Rand. But, I read a lot of history because that does repeat itself over and over. Things that happened will happen again. They happen in business. And so, look, I do encourage that. I do think you can make a lot of mistakes, but if you can read about them and internalize them as if you did actually face them, you can multiply the amount of experiences you've had without having to absorb all the difficulties.
Yeah, it seems like a fine balance, I think. And I think, again, to both ends of the spectrum. And it's easy sometimes to go into your head and say, I need to experience one end of it without giving any weighting to the other, right? Reading, experiencing a lot of the stuff that's out there that's, I guess, a library away, right?
Yeah. And look, it's, the reason of Victor Hugo is one of my favorite authors in Tolstoy is because they have why are they so popular? Somehow they've captured in fiction the essence of human nature.
Hmm.
And so you don't have to go and actually fight in the Napoleonic War to find out. You can read War and Peace. You
Yeah.
don't have to march 500 miles in the snow. I wouldn't recommend that.
No.
But if you but if you read the book, you'll sort of get the feeling of what went wrong, and you go like, okay, I get it. Maybe I won't, put a siege on Moscow. Whatever the equivalent of that is in your life.
Yeah.
But it will reflect on you, and if you do it right, it'll stop you from having to experience, dramatic problems
Mhm. 100%.
sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. If we sort of discuss, because we've touched on your premises a lot, but again, being an advisor, and that and being one that's focused on unconflicted advice. I think that's a key word, unconflicted. You're ultimately a lot of times telling clients things about their own premises, right? And when a founder or CEO or anyone that's sort of leading a company, um, if their sense of value is intertwined with the or their sense of identity intertwined with the company's value and the company's direction, and your analysis as an advisor sort of points the other direction. How do you sort of deliver that truth in a way that's, I guess, palatable and something that actually makes it easy for them to absorb, even though it's difficult?
Very difficult. You have to be able to do it with facts and numbers. And, there are some times like when a world's happening, you have a gut feel. I can think of one. I won't bore you with the example, but I did convince somebody that my gut feel of where the markets, it was around the '08 crisis. I had a very large deal going on, and I called the CEO and I said, I just think the market's collapsing here. We should get done with something. Um, Look, that's why you develop relationships. People think going out for dinner with a client or playing golf or talking to them, and this whole idea of why texting isn't going to replace it. That all that is work. You don't realize it, but the 4 hours that you might have been with a client playing golf is going to be the basis from which they trust and understand your decision to disagree with them.
Mhm.
And it could be a multi-billion-dollar decision. And if you just show up at the meeting and you have no relationship, yeah, he might just go, like, yeah, I don't know who you are. I hired your firm. You seem to be the guy they gave me, but I'm going this direction. But you spend 4 hours, on a course. I'm just using that as an example. You go out for dinner
Mhm.
and you realize that you actually appreciate, you don't even have to see the world the same way, but I appreciate the way you discern the world. By the way, that's why you want to be well read too, and why you want to keep up with things like current events.
Mhm.
Everybody around you is trying to figure out, are you curious? Can you discern trends? Do you understand what's going on in the world? Are you a second hander? Well, then I am not going to actually give your judgment a lot of credence because I think you're a second hander. But even if you have disagreements with somebody, how do you think about it? How do you take in information? How do you change your opinion over time? Those things all develop in that relationship. So when you get all this, oh, bankers just, go out for dinner with people. It's probably the most important part of the business. You both have an understanding of how you think about things and what the decision is going to be made, and there's trust. So it's important.
No, I think you're so right because you're spending so much time with these people. You sort of understand how they think, little things that they might say. You understand where the most friction in what they're saying lies. And I think once you sort of understand that, and that, in my opinion, is both a art and a science. You might correct me, and I think there's a
Well, and it doesn't have to be the same. Like somebody might say to me, "Well, Ken, I know you're a chicken. I know you're you have your risk reward. Look, everybody has a different risk reward in life. There
Mhm.
is no right risk reward. It's,
Right.
what you want to take.
Mhm.
And so somebody might be out here and I might be over here. So I might view the situation as I wouldn't take that risk.
Mhm.
And they go, I hear what you're saying. I know why you wouldn't do it, but I'm going to do it. And that's fine. As long as we've talked about, I think you're further out on the risk spectrum than I would be. And they say, yeah, I get that. Okay. As long, now I've made my point and they've overrode it because they have a different parameter that they want to put into play. And that's fine.
A lot of what we've discussed for the last, I guess, few questions is, I guess, focus on human nature. And if you look at something that has been sort of considered, and you can't really escape a conversation these days about AI. But again, AI is something that again, you can't just escape a conversation about finance and AI. So if technical expertise sort of becomes increasingly automated, your DCFs, your CCAs, all basically evaluation stuff, and other stuff as well, and it starts to get commoditized, what becomes a true source of differentiation for an advisor beyond even having reputation or even the right relationships?
It's still going to be, and I'm not saying AO won't get here. Look, you could be sitting in a room and somebody tell you they're not going to do a deal because it's not accretive. But your read of them is they're not doing the deal because they think they'll be fired if there's some personal reason.
Hmm.
There's some second agenda, which there is, by the way. You got to remember, in a room full of people making decisions, everybody has a subcontext of what's going on in their life. Are they, are they, who knows? I was going to use, are they happily married? Are they getting divorced? Are they, their kids in college? Is they having, look, there's pressures. Everybody has a life. And so you're sitting in a room and you're pretending everything's about a DCF and a spreadsheet, and yet it's not. It's about a lot of things. Do they trust, does the CEO trust the CFO? Does the you don't know all the interpersonal things that have gone on, but that's where a banker can who gets in there and spends a lot of time can help. Can AI do that? Maybe. I don't know how they're going to get all that information, through sensors. Maybe, they'll have better light. They'll have like a real lie detector inside. So when this, they'll know right away that that's not the real reason or something. I don't know exactly how far this goes,
Hmm.
but the one thing that is important is that the person on the other side of the table truly knows you care. I was going to say truly believes you care,
Hmm.
but that you don't want to fool that. That believes means you can fool it. That's why I use the word knows you care.
Hmm.
That will create a relationship that allows you to do everything. Caring, I think, I don't know if I've said it a lot. I think the number one asset of an advisor is caring because you're an advisor and everybody's just trying to figure out who's screwing me. At the end of every conversation, a person who's been on this planet for more than 25 years has figured out that somebody's trying to get something from you,
Hmm.
especially once you get to be a CEO. So, who really cares about you, who actually cares, is an unbelievable asset. Now, will AI be able to truly care? Maybe. Maybe. Again, that's beyond my pay grade.
You touched on a very interesting point there that I personally think is often characterized with Wall Street and finance a lot. It's very extractive. What can I get out of this person? Now, you've spoken about a lesson that your father gave you. He had a central alarm station company, I believe.
Yeah.
And when computers were introduced, he just asked his clients, I want to emphasize, he asked some of his clients, rather than billing them, um, just to help, paying for a computer that would just help, I guess, him. And 90 people responded, which was a
Yep.
lot. So you've said
Yep.
that you've sort of learned that client relationships are not this idea that you just give me your advice and then you go work with another client, right? It's I also want you to grow. I want to work with you. I want to sort of grow with you. And we just touched on that idea that in Wall Street it can be a little extractive sometimes, where you're just looking at what am I getting out of this person? How do you protect that learning, that lesson?
I still think it starts with caring. If you're caring about the whole thing, by the way, the last part that's wonderful about investment banking is your clients are big companies. You're not selling a home for a family, or even, I used to look at the agents for stars, and you're still dealing with a human being whose payment to you is somewhat personal and out of their pocket. These companies, if you do a good job for them, they will take care of you.
Mhm.
They realize you're a very unique asset, or your firm is a very unique asset that cares. And by the way, to reestablish that is scary and tough and takes time. And so they will pay you. And that's the best part of it is usually if you I can only tell you in 40 years, I might have been like screwed once. That if you lead with your best service over and over and over again over 40 years to have one time when somebody just stiffed you, that's unbelievable.
Mhm.
So that's what's great. Look, it puts you in a unique position. You're dealing with high caliber people. Put yourself out there, put your caring out there. You'll do very well. And almost any job. And the more high caliber the people, the more you're caring and putting yourself second in this relationship, you'd be amazed what comes out of it.
And you really can't fake it. You can't fake caring. I think if you're
You-
working with a company that is experienced, I think they'll be able to tell instantly.
I think you can't fake it. I mean, you might be able to get away with it for a little bit, but I don't think you can fake it. Again, sometimes they say, if you look a dog in the eye, don't do that, because it's like their smell, their sight, there's all this, and we forget sometimes that we're evaluating each other on a unconscious level that is much more than the words that are coming out of your mouth. People are watching. I've left a meeting sometimes and I've even asked my wife, and she goes, "I don't like that guy." And you know, have basic no idea, what the conversation was about, but evaluating in a sense that's very, subliminal. And yeah, so I agree with you. You can't fake it because we have evaluation techniques that we don't even know. We call them gut feel.
Hmm.
Whatever we call them, they're actually real.
Yeah.
And anytime I've ever gone against my gut feel about an individual, I've really paid the price. Because there are people who'll try to trick you. I will tell people that if your gut's telling you to stay away, stay away.
Yeah, no, 100%. I want to talk about the Middle East. Perhaps I'm a little biased because I grew up there, and I think when you were doing some of the early the landmark transactions, I think Dubai World in 2011 it was. I think I was
Yep.
7 years old, so I don't think I remember it very well. But since then, Aramco, Salik, DEWA, some of the biggest companies in the region. What have your experiences in the Middle East sort of taught you about sovereign relationship building, and what has been different about the Middle East from any other region that you've been able to advise?
It's funny to me. It's been very much like others, and the reason is it's an incredibly relationship based society. I I loved it, and I took to it right. And I think the reason, look, the first time I flew to Dubai, I think probably my first time in the region, and they hired me on the spot, and I've I've loved the time there, and I think it's because it may be the most relationship based place on earth. And once you develop a trust, it's a deep trust. I took my whole family to Saudi on on Christmas break last year because I told them they would love it. And when I showed up at Dubai in 2011, 2010, I think it started. It was a great opportunity because I wasn't looking for money. I was looking to get them out of a problem. And I was looking to put my soul and heart and work and team. And I never asked that there was no money to be had. And I think I don't think they had been in a position yet where somebody didn't fly in and ask them for money. And so we started on, it was a very lucky to be involved with the restructuring where you got to lean into, hey, I'm here for you and I am here to make sure you guys come out of this safely and I'm not going to try to extract any money from you. And I think that was very unique up to that.
And I think, as you just mentioned, that care, and we've spoken about it. I think it's what led you to sort of over the last decade or so have such a good relationship over some of the bulge brackets that historically, as we've mentioned, have some of the brand power and also the balance sheet power. So I think it also is proven in evidence or in real life. We can see it, right?
I think they knew I cared about them. I went into Dubai and helped them restructure and I told them, I won't go through the whole story, but yes, I convinced them. By the way, at the time, all the lending down there was European banks and British banks. And if you remember in '08, all that stuff got taken over by the government
Hmm.
in the crisis. So as I said to them, you're everybody who came to pitch them was European because America hadn't started coming over as much yet to the Middle East. That they left that part of the world to London.
Perhaps it goes back to that internal evaluation system people have, right? You mentioned being well read is an important thing, and I think subconsciously it plays a big role in them trusting you as well, right?
And I meant it, so I think they felt it. I think I did mean it. I I literally almost got hired at the meeting, and I had never met them before. And I think they had a really good gut feel about it. And we did. We did a good. I thought we did a really good job for them. And I've done it every time we go in there.
Hmm.
I lean into making sure, I lean into representing them. And but that's what I do for everybody. But I think it was rare. It just wasn't. That's why I ended up, I think, in a good position. They just hadn't had that kind of representation, I think, for many, many years.
Yeah.
Now I think people are catching on to it a little.
Yeah. So we have to protect the secret sauce, you think, huh?
Yeah, well, I think they realize, look, the whole thing's become more sophisticated and it's not just an extractive visit to go there. Look, bankers are smart and they will catch on to what the right thing to do is.
Yeah. We sort of touched on the 3 a.m. sleep, I guess sleep routine that you had for 30 odd years or 35 plus years.
Yeah.
And
I
I think you already mentioned it, but my question in that regard is you've obviously had to let go. And when I say let go, you're I see it as a CEO of a firm who founded this firm, Obviously, you started with Navid Mahmood Siddiqian and Jeff Rich, people that you worked with at UBS, and now obviously Navid's at the top, CEO. But in terms of stepping down, what does letting go really require? Like it's obviously not an easy process. It's again something you've started. So what does that process of letting go really require of you personally as Ken?
Um, yeah, it's something I'm pretty proud of. I mean, everybody said they didn't expect it. As you can probably tell, I love the deals. My name is on the door, and I'm the CEO and the founder. And in order to do a healthy transition, I decided it's going to take more time because of the name and the whole thing. So I didn't want to do the transition to a new CEO at 71. I mean, could I have stayed in the job? Sure, I could have. I think I'm in good shape. But Navid was a perfect age. He had founded the company with me. He's 12 years younger than me. I think he's 55 or 56. The perfect time. He's the best deal technician, strategist, I'd call it, not technician, strategist. He's an unbelievable M&A banker. He really is good. And then he sat by me we might have disagreed on things, but we've seen what each other think an organization should be. Um, and he deserved the opportunity to do it. So it was the right thing to do for the firm. And I'm proud of that because there are a lot of people who can't do that. There are things, of course, I've done wrong. Um, I didn't do everything right. And to watch him now kind of look at those things, re-examine them, maybe change them, maybe do some a little bit different. So the real goal for me is to stay with clients now. I love being with clients. I'm on my way to New York to do clients. I'm going to DC. The next week and a half, I'm going to Europe. I'll be in London, Paris. I am visiting clients. That's what I do best, I think, anyway. That's what I like.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to give a lot of room for this next generation to create to keep the firm on its front foot. And I'm pretty excited to watch it. It's you're young, so you wouldn't know it. Again, I never thought I'd ever be like talking to you from this position of being the older guy in the room. I've been the youngest guy in the room my whole life. And it's very weird. And I'm proud of the fact that I did it because it's hard. It's hard to actually go, I'm going to step away and then do it. Because if I stay over his shoulder, it will screw up. He's
100%. Yeah.
got to move away and you got to let him do the things he wants to do. And that's what we're going to do. And then I'm going to I think I'll be a very productive banker and I enjoy it.
I appreciate that you say it's hard because as we've discussed, I think 30 odd minutes ago, we talked about the idea that everything is hard, right? You just have to sort of pick,
Everything's hard.
yeah, you have to pick your hard, right? Working in banking and sort of getting the best mandates and giving the right advice is hard, but also stepping back and trying not to look over someone's shoulder is also hard. Hmm.
I had many a time where I thought I had ended it, where I'd done a bad deal, or I was 25 when I did my first deal at Drexel Burnham that didn't work. It went bankrupt, and I was like 100%. I couldn't get out of bed.
Mm.
I mean, I think it's important for everybody to know. I almost couldn't get to work. I was like, my career's over. Nobody's ever done this. Mike Milken never did this. Nobody who's successful has had this. And the answer is, of course they have. Get out. And something got me out of bed. I just kept going. And by the way, I thought everybody at work was talking about my mistake and how Ken Moelis was an idiot. Nobody, nobody, nobody's looking at your life. Nobody was mentioning it. Nobody cared. They just wanted to know where I was and could I work on the next deal and could we keep going. And you made so much of it. It's a really good thing where people tell you when everybody goes, what do you think people think of me? And the right answer is they don't.
Hmm.
Not not that they think you're good, they think you're
Hmm.
bad. They're spending zero time on you. They're too busy thinking of themselves.
Yeah, I guess
So
that's just
just
the
keep
human in
going.
us. It's the human in us. Just we just overestimate our importance in people's lives.
Right. Right.
But thank you so much for your honesty throughout this conversation, Ken. I really enjoyed it. And before I end, I just had one very quick question. What advice would you give people, just to, broadly?
Um, I think most of what I just said, which is get up every day and care about what you're doing. Um, people don't care enough about the quality of what they're doing,
Mhm.
and people will know that you care.
Mhm.
Um, a quality product stands out. I mean, you know, I don't know, Hermes or whatever they charge 37 times for the same product. It's because there's like 10%, there's some amount of more caring in the product, but there's not that much difference in the content of the garment, et cetera. So if you care about yourself and you care about the quality of what you're doing, you'll go a long way. And that's look, that's what I would that's what I'd say. And then don't let it get you down. I mean, the fact is, whatever you're running into today, so's everybody else.
Mhm.
And just get up and do it again. You'll learn from it. It'll be experience. You'll have more. Well, look, one more thing I've said, which I think is important for everybody to know. I think it was falsely attributed to Einstein that he said, compound interest was the most powerful force in the world. I'm not sure he said it, but it was attributed to him. I think actually compound experience is the most powerful force in the world. Once you start experiencing things and get out there and do things, um, if your experience compounds. And so if you're working hard, why do we work people hard early? If you can build a base and then it compounds off of that, no one will ever catch you in terms of your expertise and your experience.
Mhm.
So getting out and experiencing things and getting experience, that's what even reading is an experience. I put it in there. I think if you've experienced history in a book, you have an experience. And it does compound. And then you find out that you're so far ahead of how other people can rationally ration through ideas and problems that all the attention will come to you and all the toughest problems will come to you. And then you'll have more experience
Mhm.
and it just accelerates. So get out there and experience is a compounding event.
I think that's probably going to be one of my biggest takeaways because I think even speaking to you has been an experience for me that's probably going to compound further in things I learned, things I experienced, and hopefully some of the lessons I've taken away will help me a lot
Well,
more
I
than
appreciate it.
those
You did a
lessons.
great job, by the way, just for everybody on the phone. I don't do these.
Mhm.
I thought Aryan did a great job of sending me an email that wasn't, can I interview you? There was enough in there where I was like, wow, this guy listened to this. He must have found this audio from 10 years ago and actually listened to it like it wasn't even the first thing I said. And I was like, okay, if he's going to ask those kinds of questions and do that kind of work, he cared, by the way. So what did I think? I probably thought you cared about what you were doing and cared about the interview. So I said yes. And I think it's the only interview I've done for a school or something in, 4 or 5 years.
I
So
really
anyway,
appreciate that. And again, thank you so
thanks.
much for making the time. I've learned a lot, and I hope the people watching this have as well. And I hope you enjoyed.
I did. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.